In the fall of 1973, this company had less than $5,000 left in its bank account, planes it couldn't afford to fuel, and a founder who was, by his own admission, out of options. That founder took the company's last $5,000, flew to Las Vegas, and sat down at a blackjack table. Today, that company delivers over 17 million packages a day and generates roughly $90 billion a year in revenue. This is the story of FedEx and the one weekend a single gamble, on cards and on an idea nobody else believed in, decided whether the company would exist at all. To understand why FedEx's founder ended up at a casino with the company's last dollars, you first have to understand just how radical his original idea was and how little anyone besides him believed in it. In 1965, a Yale undergraduate named Fred Smith wrote a term paper proposing a new model for shipping urgent packages. Instead of routing them directly between cities, as the existing air freight industry did, every package would first fly to one central hub, get sorted, and then fly back out to its final destination, even if that meant a package went hundreds of miles out of its way before reaching a city right next door. The idea seemed inefficient on its face, and the paper reportedly received an unremarkable grade from Smith's professor, who wasn't convinced the concept was viable. But Smith didn't let it go. After serving in the Marine Corps, he pursued the idea for real, founding Federal Express in 1971, headquartered in Memphis, Tennessee, and built entirely around that same hub-and-spoke model. Getting the idea off the ground required serious capital, dedicated cargo planes, a purpose-built sorting facility, and a nationwide network of routes, all built before the company had a single paying customer to justify the cost. Smith raised roughly $80 million in startup capital, an enormous sum for the era, combining his own inheritance with investment from venture capital. Federal Express launched operations in April 1973, flying its first packages between a network of 25 cities. The hub-and-spoke model worked exactly as Smith had envisioned technically. Packages really could move faster through one central sorting point than through a tangle of direct routes. But there was a problem the term paper hadn't accounted for: burning through $80 million in startup capital before building a large enough customer base to cover the company's massive fixed costs: the planes, the fuel, the Memphis hub facility, all running whether or not enough packages were on board to pay for it. Within months of launching, Federal Express was hemorrhaging cash at an alarming rate. By the fall of 1973, the company Smith had built around an idea nobody else initially believed in was down to its very last reserves. And every major bank and investor he approached for emergency funding turned him down. The crisis came to a head over a fuel bill. Federal Express owed a payment to its fuel suppliers, commonly cited at around $24,000, and the company's account held nowhere near enough to cover it. Without fuel, the planes couldn't fly. Without flights, there was no business left to save. Smith had already been rejected by General Dynamics' board just days earlier when he pitched them on further investment. One more closed door in a long list of them that week. With the company's bank account down to about $5,000 and the fuel payment due, by Smith's own later account, he took that remaining money to Las Vegas over the weekend and played blackjack. He won. Reports of the exact amount vary, but Smith has described walking away with roughly $27,000. Enough, combined with what remained in the company's account, to cover the fuel payment and keep the planes flying for a few more critical days. Here's the detail that makes this moment more than just a wild story. The same conviction that had made Smith bet his own inheritance and years of his life on an idea his professor didn't believe in was the exact same instinct that sent him to a blackjack table with the company's last dollars rather than accepting that Federal Express was finished. It wasn't recklessness for its own sake. It was the same total, stubborn belief in the idea, expressed one more time at the worst possible moment. The blackjack winnings didn't save Federal Express on their own. They bought the company a handful of additional days of operation at a moment when even one more day mattered enormously. And Smith used exactly that window to keep pushing for the real solution: new investment capital large enough to put the company on stable footing. Shortly after, Smith secured a new round of financing, reported at roughly $11 million, from a group of investors willing to bet on the hub-and-spoke model despite the company's brush with total collapse. It was enough to stabilize operations, cover the immediate cash crisis, and let Federal Express keep building out its network without another near-death moment of that scale. The years immediately following were still difficult. The company continued operating at a loss for a period as it built out its customer base, but the fundamental model Smith had insisted on since his Yale term paper began proving itself at scale. By 1975, Federal Express was handling meaningfully increasing package volume. By 1976, the company recorded its first full year of profitability. From that point forward, Federal Express, later shortened in branding to FedEx, grew into one of the largest logistics companies in the world. By 1983, just a decade after nearly running out of fuel money in Memphis, FedEx became one of the first American companies to reach $1 billion in annual revenue within 10 years of launching, without a merger or acquisition along the way. Fred Smith remained closely involved with the company for decades afterward, eventually stepping back from day-to-day leadership in 2022 after roughly 50 years running the company he'd founded on a college term paper. FedEx today operates a global fleet of hundreds of aircraft and delivers well over 17 million packages daily. The blackjack weekend itself became part of company lore. Smith has recounted it publicly in interviews over the years, sometimes downplaying the mythology that's grown around it, noting that the gamble bought days, not certainty, and that the real turnaround came from the investment round that followed. FedEx's story isn't really about a lucky night at a casino. It's about what happens when total conviction in an idea, the same conviction that gets a company built in the first place, refuses to fold even when every rational option has been exhausted, and how sometimes that stubbornness is the only thing standing between a company and the end. It's worth noting this isn't really a strategy. Most companies that gamble their last dollars don't win at the blackjack table. But it's a pattern that shows up in a different form again and again in business history. Founders who refuse to accept no from every bank, every investor, and every rational voice around them, right up until something breaks in their favor. And it's a very different pattern from the kind of story we've covered so far in this series. Because this time, the gamble is exactly what saved the company instead of what destroyed it. If you'd like to understand the hidden forces shaping our global economy, help us by subscribing to our channel.